and welcome to the Garden of the Gods Visitor and Nature Center. Today we want to share some information with you about one of our favorite birds here at the Garden of the Gods Park, which is the black-billed magpie. And Carol Wilcox is our local volunteer expert on the black-billed magpie. Carol's an amazing volunteer here at the center.
Thank you.
And she's going to show us this really interesting nest that we have that the magpies built right next to the terrace, and also teach us a little bit about magpies.
And you can actually hear the two of them hanging around and squawking. They are still building this amazing nest. But let me introduce you to Pie. This is our taxidermy magpie, so you can really see what a magpie looks like. And yes, it's a black and white bird, but look at the tail. It's a very long tail, as long as from the head to the body. This particular bird's about 18 inches. Some of them get to be 22, 23 inches. So they build a very large nest. And sometimes you can see it when it's in an oak tree without leaves. This one, you can see a little bit of it. They've been working on this for, I believe, 2 months now, and you can see the twigs. So this is actually what it looks like when you see it from an oak tree. This was in my neighborhood. The nest is actually about 3 feet tall, 2.5 feet wide. And they do have openings because this is a big bird. And you can see a little bit of the twigs there. This is an active nest. They actually built this nest very close to where people would normally be sitting. So we didn't know what would happen before we were closed. Would they dive bomb people sitting here, which is part of the behavior of a magpie to protect their nest? Or would they abandon the nest and relocate? Because birds can be stressed. But right now they have complete freedom to build away, and I've already seen them. I do not know the status at this point. This is my first time seeing it in a while, whether she has laid the eggs or not yet. But pretty soon we will have baby magpies, which is pretty amazing. When I last saw this nest a couple of months ago, when we first, just before we closed, I did not know the status of when she would be incubating, and I haven't been back until today. So now it appears we have 2 fledged baby magpies, and the parents are around watching them. Many people who live among magpies never see the fledged ones because the parents are so protective. And I've only seen one parent. It's possible there are still more eggs in there. And one other thing about the nest. Female is the interior designer. She lays her eggs in a mud cup that she has designed. So that's another function. They both build the nest. She could still be in the nest right now, but we can't see in. So we're just kind of guessing at this point. But this is a treat, an absolute treat to see the babies out here and the parent watching them. So now we have spotted in the juniper a baby magpie. He has a short tail. They don't grow their tails long until by the end of the summer. And actually by the end of the summer they are pretty much the size of their parents. And the iridescence is beginning to show. I'm amazed at how calm he is, because he's on his own now apparently, unless his parents are the ones nearby watching. A lot of times when parents are with a juvenile or just a newly fledged, I just saw something up there, they will squawk at you. Ah, there's another one right up there. They're babies. See, he's trying to flex his wings to understand how to fly. Sometimes a baby is either fallen out of the nest too early or is pushed out. And these appear to have their flight feathers, but they are not comfortable yet flying. The parent is squawking at you and telling you to leave. Seeing one of the parents in the bush with the two fledglings, and he's actually pretty close to Christina because she's a little too close to the fledglings for the comfort of the magpie. And there it is, right there watching closely. I have been dive bombed by a magpie in the Garden of the Gods off of the Perkins Trail. I had a group of school kids with me. They thought it was cool. There is an Australian magpie that is not from the corvid or crow family, and they are much more aggressive to the point where they have signs up because they actually attack people. They are black and white, and they look similar. They don't have a long tail. And when many English people moved to Australia, they saw their own black-billed magpie, which is a bird, the Eurasian magpie is similar to ours, and they called theirs a magpie, but it is not from the crow or corvid family. But it's way more aggressive than ours. So our black-billed magpie is from the Corvidae family, or corvid for short. And there is a joke, if you want to know about it. It's corvid, not COVID, that's going around the magpie and corvid world. So its cousins are ravens and the crows, and also every jay is part of the crow family. They are extremely intelligent, observant, curious birds. All of them have similar behavior in that respect. So now we see that the fledgling baby magpie has moved a little bit from branch to branch. Just kind of getting his feathers going. He's not actually flying yet, but they flap their feathers up and down to learn how to get that movement. And this is an amazing lesson. It just chased a scrub jay away. That blue bird was a woodhouse scrub jay, and it got too close to the nest.
And you said the jays are in the same family.
Yes, the
right?
jays are in the same corvid family. The interesting thing is the magpie is protecting the nest, but the magpie is also known to invade another bird's nest and steal the eggs or eat the baby birds. One of the things that nature does, not all birds do that, but yes, magpies are thieves in that regard, but they're also extremely protective. And you can see he's squawking away at us, so we don't get too near. The babies are still up here in the juniper bush, really trying to learn how to fly like little children learn how to walk. So we're taking the video of these babies and we're going to leave them alone, so you don't have to. You don't really want to be near the fledglings. The parents are very protective for a couple of weeks. They teach them how to fend for themselves, how to get food, but you really don't want to bother them. And we know that one of the parents is angry with us already, so we have done for you what we don't want you to do, is get close and stay there and bother them. Babies are attractive, all baby animals, birds. This is unique. We actually didn't expect to see them. So please understand that we don't want you to come out and spend a lot of time. If you happen to see them, take a picture and leave.
Hey, so Carol, that was amazing seeing those little baby magpies out
It
there.
was.
That was such a special treat.
It was.
So is that something that you could find in every corner of the world? Do you find magpies everywhere, or are they unique to Colorado?
Well, no, they are found in only certain states, and that's why visitors who come here from New York, Florida, Texas have not ever seen a magpie. They're mainly in the Intermountain states. Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, but they do go into Oregon, Washington, into the southwest part of Canada, and they are in Alaska. And my family and I were traveling in Alaska and saw one way in the backcountry of Denali. So they're very cool. And just to mention too, they are found in Europe. It's called the Eurasian Magpie, so Europe and then China and Korea. They are the black-billed magpie, look the same, they just have a slight different classification if you're into taxonomy and the names of birds. But so they're known quite a few places, but not the major cities that we get a lot of visitors from. So they're very interested in the magpie.
which environments do we find magpies in? Are we going to find magpies on top of Pikes Peak?
No,
or?
the magpie usually doesn't go much beyond 8,000 feet, which would take it pretty much to Woodland Park. They're very much cold weather birds. They don't seem to mind the cold weather at all because they're in Alaska, they're in the snow. I kind of joke with myself and say they must not like humidity because you don't find them in the humid parts of the country, Texas, Florida, places like that. They haven't shown up there.
And then I'm also curious, do they migrate? Or do
No, they
stay?
are not migratory birds.
Okay.
They pretty much stay put, and they're year-round residents in all of the places that I've mentioned.
Wonderful. All right, Carol, what can you tell us about magpie behavior?
Well, obviously this is a very fascinating bird, and there's a lot of things to look at, especially if you're into bird watching. And I brought a picture to illustrate. This happens to be taken by Larry Marr, one of our wildlife photographers here. And there are two magpies facing off a red-tailed hawk. So what's going to happen is the magpies usually do this in gang fashion, get a few of their friends, and they are trying to protect the nest or other birds in their territory from a predator. Hawk is a predator. And they will literally make a move to chase away the predator. It's called mobbing. So they are known to have mobbed even a bald eagle. They're very aggressive in that sense. They're not aggressive to us, but if they sense a predator is around, they will do this. And I will give you a very funny observation that I just recently saw in the Garden of the Gods Park. We have Canada geese that have migrated here, and there was a lone goose up on White Rock, large fat goose, sitting like a sentinel, and very soon a gang of magpies tried to mob that goose, and they went around him like this, tried to chase him, but the goose didn't budge. But it was very funny to watch. So mobbing is meaning chasing away a predator, and this is one of their behaviors.
So, Carol, I've heard that magpies are really smart compared to other birds. So I was wondering if you could talk about whether they are intelligent, and how do we know that?
Oh, they're super intelligent. They do a lot of amazing things. They recognize faces, they mimic speech, they mimic wildlife. But one of the most interesting things that's been done, you would know that as you look in a mirror, you recognize yourself. Infants start to recognize themselves at a pretty early age. So lots of research was done with primates, and they recognize themselves, and even dolphins and orcas do. But then research was done on birds, and the specific research that I have learned about was done in Europe. So I have to technically say the Eurasian magpie was part of this. And they put these birds into a little container with a mirror. First, the birds did nothing. And then they put a mark, as you will see on my little plush magpie. And as soon as the mark was on there, the magpie went up and started to push it off. They'd use their beak, they used their foot, they would rub their body. They are the first bird and only bird so far to have passed the mirror recognition test. It's called the mark test because they have a mark on them. But they clearly know that's on me and I don't like that spot. I want it off. So they have this, actually it's kind of an interesting situation that the magpie is so far the only bird that has passed the test. I expect other birds eventually to pass it, but that's one of the great things about the intelligence of the magpie. Recognizes itself in the mirror.
Carol and I are here in the exhibit halls at the Visitor and Nature Center, and we have some really amazing exhibits that include information about magpies, so we wanted to share those with you and show you what kind of neat facts you can find in here. So one of my favorite exhibits is here in our Flora and Fauna Hall, and it's called The Ecology of the Garden of the Gods. And you can see these beautiful photos up here. So if you're visiting the park and you see an animal or a plant and you're curious about what it is, you can actually use this exhibit to help you identify it. You can look down here on the screen and there's plants, animals, and habitats, which is where the plants and animals would live. So for finding a magpie, let's go ahead and touch the animals button.
We've touched the animals and then we're touching birds.
And then we do see a picture of a magpie in here.
We could touch on the picture, or because we know they are omnivores, eat pretty much anything they want, we can touch on that. And you see the magpies up there. Those are, that's a magpie feeding a very young magpie. And then their habitats, their locations, where they live, they raise their young. They are in the prairie grasslands. They're in the wetlands. There's a magpie up there. Mountain shrubs. There's the same magpie. Pinyon and juniper woodlands. So you do not find the magpie in a very dense forest. Its habitat usually has a kind of open area with tall trees. They like the ponderosa, the juniper, the oak tree. They like to be visible. That's one thing we notice about magpies is you often see them high up in the tree looking at everything, observing their environment. They'll sit on a high lamppost. They might talk to you. That's a magpie. They are opportunistic birds and they take advantage of anything they can. And that's kind of what I love about them. They have a bold personality, but they also know they want to know everything about their environment that they can. So keep in mind, they're kind of symbolic. Take advantage of every opportunity. Think of the magpie. So one of the interesting things about a magpie, it's a black and white bird. The male and the female are very much the same color, hard to tell them apart. However, when the sunlight hits the feathers, you get this beautiful iridescent colors in the tail, usually greens and blues. So this is the wing feather. You can see that there's some blue in that one, a little green. And then on their very long tail, this shows, actually it shows greens and there's even some reds and purples in there. And a lot of times visitors are mesmerized when they see this black and white bird all of a sudden start to show these glowing iridescent colors. They are not the permanent colors. It's permanently a black and white bird. So this particular phenomenon occurs when the sunlight hits the feathers. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about birds, especially the black-billed magpie, you have children at home that have an interest in birding, this is one of the great books, Wild About Rocky Mountain Birds. And you can see there is our black-billed magpie. Wonderful descriptions of many types of birds that are found here in the Rockies. So I would encourage that. And John Marsloff, he's done a TED Talk on this too, The Gifts of the Crow. Remember, these are all from the crow or corvid family. And so these are stories of citizen scientists like you and I would be observing birds. And there's a lot of funny, interesting, and scientific material in here. It's an easy read, The Gifts of the Crow by John Marsloff.